Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of NCompass Live. I am your host, Krista Burns, here at the Nebraska Library Commission. NCompass Live is the Commission's weekly online event where we cover any activities that may be of interest to librarians across the state. We have Commission staff that do presentations, summer sessions, and we have guest speakers that come in. We have a mishmash of that today, as we do often. We do these sessions every Wednesday morning live at 10 a.m. Central Time. And they are recorded, so you can always watch recordings later if you're not available to be here on Wednesday mornings with us. This morning, as I said, we have a mixture here. We have Sally Snyder, who's our coordinator of children and young adult library services here at the Library Commission, and Sandy Wallick from the Gere branch of Lincoln City Libraries. We're going to talk about NASA and Jupiter and some cool things we can do. Go ahead and try and click on it there. Yeah.
No, okay.
There we go. Yeah. Give you some tips on using this in your libraries. So take it away, guys.
Okay, I'm going to jump back up for a minute because I do want to mention that Sarah Dale had planned to be here, but she wasn't able to attend. So some of her information is in the slideshow, and Sandy's going to help let us know what kinds of activities she has planned for this summer. But Sarah and I went together to the training that was in Grand Island on February 16th and 17th. And it was called Explore Jupiter's Family Secrets. And this was pulled together by the Lunar and Planetary Institute in Houston, Texas. And they had us there for 2 days where they had us do the activities. They told us about all kinds of things I didn't know enough about. They gave us a pre-test. I hope I did better on the post-test. I think I did. It's kind of funny, the things you think you know, but then, you're not really as knowledgeable as you remember, because when was the last time you had to name the planets out from the sun? Well, there you go. There's a trick for you. So here's some websites that you might find useful later on. Lunar and Planetary Institute has a website. All of the things that we'll be talking about today are on their website under Jupiter's Family Secrets, and I'm going to be showing you some of the things that are on that website during this program. So you can go there and explore at your leisure whenever you have a chance, because there's so much good information out there in just that website. And then, of course, there's the NASA website, which has all kinds of information. If you go to that second website there that says Mission Pages-Juno, we'll be talking about Juno in a couple of minutes. That has some photographs of the actual Juno spacecraft that's going to go to Jupiter. And the reason really that they pull together all of this information for us.
And just want to let you know that all these links that are on here, don't worry about trying to scribble them all down. When we post up the recording of this session, I will have all those links there as well that you can just click on and go right to, no problem.
Thank you for saying that. I don't want people jotting down things like crazy.
Yeah, don't.
When you can get it later. So at our workshop in February, our presenters, two people were from the Lunar and Planetary Institute, Kellyanne LeConte and Christine Shupla. And we also were fortunate to have Dr. Michael Jansen from Pasadena, California, and I'll talk more about him a little later. But I was really impressed with how well they could, particularly Dr. Jansen, because he's working with stuff I can't even really figure out. And he could let us, explain things to us so that I understood it. And I really am impressed when people can do that, because often if you have such a depth of knowledge, it's hard to talk in lay terms with other people. So here's a question for you. What are the planets from the sun in our solar system from the sun out? And if you were like me, if you are like I was, and I can name the first ones, but then I get kind of mixed up on those last ones. Whoops, I forgot. I went in the wrong order. I'll just jump down here. The planets, Sarah Dale said that someone in her family, I can't remember who taught her this, my very elderly mother just shot up North Platte. And there you go. There they are. Okay, but Pluto's not a planet anymore, right?
It's just terrible. I think that's horrible. But anyway.
Yeah, and Dr. Jansen talked about that, the fact that Pluto is not a planet anymore. And he mentioned if you want to know more about that, there is a book out called How I Killed Pluto and Why It Had It Coming by Mike Brown. So apparently he's the guy who really did the dirty deed, and there was a reason. And So he did explain more to us, but I won't go into that now. Anyway, I thought this was such a great mnemonic for remembering the planets. My very elderly mother just shut up. We said Norfolk since Pluto's not there anymore. Okay, now I'm going to do the very bad thing of jumping back up through my slides. And we'll talk just for a couple minutes about Juno, which is a spacecraft that's going to be launched in August of this year. And it has a 5-year trip to the planet Jupiter, and its mission is to learn more about the planet. And then underneath there I have that quote from Toby Owen, who explains why they're calling it Juno, because Jupiter's wife was named Juno in Greek and Roman mythology. And anyway, we're not going to be peeking through the clouds to see what Jupiter's up to, but just to see what might be there. And we're really hoping we find some water, but we don't know. And
so at the moment, they have got the launch plan for August 5th. So at Gere Branch Library, Sarah has planned a launch party for our teens as part of our summer program. And we're going to have them in our meeting rooms. We'll have the broadcast of the launch up on the big screen for the kids to see. And we'll be having music ahead of time. We'll have explosive snacks for them to enjoy. We'll pop popcorn. We'll have pop rocks, that type of thing. And we'll watch the blast off. Now, should they postpone the blast off, we will still have our party on the 5th and celebrate. And Sarah's planning to go to some of the websites offered. And there's a website, well, on one of the websites, there's a place where you can drive a satellite.
yes.
And so that will be one of the options that she will have available. But we will definitely be having a party to celebrate.
That is a terrific idea. And I'm sure the kids are going to have a lot of fun. I hope that they get to see the actual launch, because that would be a tremendous, they may not realize it, but I remember, see how old I am, in grade school, sitting in a classroom with lots of other kids while we watched John Glenn orbit the Earth. And I remember thinking, well, that's okay, but, you know, I really didn't understand what a momentous thing that was at the time, but I remember watching that.
I remember when I was in school get together to watch the first space shuttle launch, the very, very first one, that it was a huge deal. And they had us all gathered together, and so, yeah. And when you see it, taking off, oh, wow, that's awesome.
There it goes, yeah. We are exploring. So I think this is a tremendous thing to celebrate, and I love the idea of a launch party. And we have some other ideas that we'll be talking about, or things that you can do or explore about doing.
And one thing we should say about this program is that what we're talking about is very inexpensive to do. For our launch party, the food and the beverages are what's going to cost us a little bit, but not much. The presenters that we will be having for some of the other events are people who are volunteers, and Sally's going to be sharing you names and locations across the state, but these are people who are willing to do programs for free. And I think that's really important to say, is that we're talking about something that's very inexpensive, very educational, and lots of fun.
It's still fun, yes. Thank you. When we showed up at the workshop, they handed us each a notebook with so here's a shot of the cover of the notebook. But don't despair, because almost everything that's in the notebook you can find on Jupiter's Family Secrets website. And we'll be going to that in a couple of minutes. And now I'm going to zoom back by my planets that Sarah Dale told me, this mnemonic. I love it. I don't think I'll ever have a problem with that again. And Sarah and I kind of divided up the chapters, but we decided it's a lot of information, and we didn't want to be too repetitive. So we're going to show you some of the ideas that we learned. We did all of the activities that they pulled together for this, and they're all on the website, so you'll get to see that in a minute. But I'm going to ask Sandy. The first thing that Sarah had planned was the Jumpstart Jupiter activity. And the information there is what Sarah had pulled together to explain what the activity is, but I'm going to let Sandy describe it for you, because we don't really just need to read through the slide.
We're going to do a planet walk with our teens. These are 11 to 18-year-olds. And what Sarah has figured out is if miles were meters and our library was the sun, how far would we have to walk to reach Mercury? How far away would we have to walk to reach Venus? How far away would we have to walk to reach Earth? And her plan is to lay this out for them. We will walk till the end of our property, but she will be giving them a schematic so that to reach the last planet, they would need to go all the way to a local coffee shop. And she was arranging to be there afterwards. She'll be over at the coffee shop so that if any of the teens do want to make the trip over, they can do that. They can walk or they can drive with their parents over there, and she will meet them there and they'll have a cup of coffee. But just to kind of show the relative distance it is from one planet to another.
And that gets into the next activity too that we'll talk about in a minute. But this first part of this first activity is for the kids to explore some of the planets. So they look up, hopefully you have some books that they can look at. You know that they're going to go on the internet to get information. I hope they go to some of the sites that we've mentioned here and come up with information about the different planets and what they're like, and maybe make a poster so that you can put those up in your library. And then you can talk about how far is it from one heavenly body to the next. So if you go to this website, Jupiter's Family Secrets, which is the one I had talked about before, and I'm just going to click here. We have it up. Here's the Lunar and Planetary Institute's homepage, and this is the Jupiter's Family Secrets main page, and it just has a little welcome and explanation there. But if you hover, this is the place to hover, activities. There's the whole list of all the things that we did the 2 days we were in Grand Island. So here is Jumpstart Jupiter, which is the first program. And I just can't get over the fact that they did all of this planning. All of the work is done. Well, the planning work is done. I know that, excuse me while I scroll a little bit. So each of these activities starts with an overview and then a section called What's the Point? So what are you learning? What are the kids going to learn? Why are we talking about this? And then it goes on to, a little bit more information. What are you going to need to do this activity? What are the things you need? And of course you can adjust the activity, change things around, but this is what they had planned, and this is what we did at our workshop. This one has some books that they recommend for finding out about the different planets, because this part was about learning about the planets before we do the second part of that activity, which you described about measuring it out. And they always have a section called For the Facilitator. And here are other websites that you might find very helpful. One of the things I want to point out is that throughout they'll mention the My Trip to Jupiter journal. You can access this. I'll just click here. It comes up with another page. And this is 41 pages. This is if you do all the activities. But you could, if you want to, you can print this out, or you can just print certain pages of the activities that you're going to do. I'll just click ahead a little bit because we have to go a couple of pages. Here's the Jumpstart Jupiter first page. And here's where kids can write in some information that they found out about different planets. And I think there's a second page. Here's a page of just information that you might just want to print this page out and have it laying around in the meeting room. So that resource is there. And as you see here, or it says, or just the relevant Jumpstart Jupiter pages. So you can just click on that to go just to the pages of the activity that you're looking at doing. But again, there's lots of other information here. And this one doesn't have it, but many of the activities will have a grade-in section that also says, additional information for the facilitator that you might want to know. And then as they have preparation information, and then down here you finally get into what is the activity. And in this activity, they talk about the sun and the planets. They also include the asteroid belt, and they're including Pluto, not because they think of it as a planet, but because it is one of those, oh gosh, I forgot what they call them now. There are a number of icy bodies out there that they say don't count as planets.
Oh, like what they brought Pluto down to, a planetoid, or
they have a term for it. And I forgot. I'm sorry. Don't give me a post-test now. But all of this is already figured out for you. I just love that. How can you argue about stuff like that?
The other great thing about this is that even if you're not able to use it right away, it'll be there. But you can be a hero to your teachers in your community by showing them this web page and showing him the activities and the sources available to them.
Very good point. That's right. If you're not going to do anything, and that's okay if you're not. You have your summer planned, or maybe you want to do it next summer. As far as I know, this will all still be there, but you can sure print everything out and keep your list of web pages. Okay, everybody close your eyes because I'm going to zoom up to the top and I don't want you sick. There we go, and I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint now. So that's where you can find those, and I'm just going to go to this next one. This is the part that Sandy was talking about, where it's the path starting at Gere and walking with the kids. And we did the inner planets, which are like the rocky planets, so we know those four. My very elderly mother, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. And the outer planets are more gaseous, and I can't remember the last part of that mnemonic, so don't. Anyway.
The other thing is, you're not just looking at the scale of the planets here. If you do something like this, you're also exploring your own neighborhood. So you're doing it on more than one level.
That's a very good point. And the idea of this jump to Jupiter, or steps to Jupiter, is to really get a sense of the scale, like you were saying. So if the library is the sun, in the activity we did, we had a stake in the yard, and we had on the activity list there, you'll see different things, like it says here, a grapefruit to a poppy seed to represent different planets. But we had a stake for the sun, and then we stepped out. How far did we jump to get to Mercury? And we wrote that down. And that's what, if you're doing with the younger kids, they love to jump from them. With the older kids, I can understand not having them jump and having them walk and see the distance. And when you're standing there on Mars and you look to where Jupiter would be, that's a very long way. And it kind of gives you a sense of, this is a much bigger. I didn't realize how far away Jupiter was from Mars till we were standing there, and she said, well, Jupiter is on around the corner and down the block.
Oh, well, I like the idea too. It just really hit me that my life. So you can access it. And another activity is what they called a planet party. And we did this in Grand Island after supper when it was getting dark. We were fortunate to have a fairly clear sky. And tell us about the planet party that Sarah's planning for her teens. Well, I mentioned that you got a list of people who were willing to come and do programs. And here in Lincoln, we had volunteer astronomers from the Hyde Observatory who were eager to work with Sarah. And so they're going to come after the library closes one night in July and bring telescopes to the library and set them up in our parking lot. And we will do after-hours viewing of the sky from Gere's parking lot. If we have inclement weather, then we're going to move indoors, and we'll put up, we'll project onto the large screen, and we will go ahead and do a, quote, live viewing from the with the use of the internet, and have the experts tell us about the sky outside and what we can be looking for and what we're seeing when we look up.
That sounds terrific. And I have to emphasize what you just said, eager to work with us. The people who were at Grand Island, well, let me just turn the page here. Whoops. Oh, yeah, I had to put that in there. Because this is such a wonderful experience for kids and teens to look up through a telescope. And, I mean, and these are they're portable, but they're still big telescopes to look at. And this is the list that was provided to us from the Lunar and Planetary Institute. They do emphasize that they don't endorse the organizations or the individuals, but they are just making the information known to us. And I think the people who were in Grand Island were the Platte Valley Astronomical Observers from Kearney, if I remember right. And they were so happy to share their telescopes and their information with us. It was amazing. And
don't worry, all of these links and info will be on the recording. This is a lot of info on one
I know,
slide.
and there's 4 slides of this information. I hate to tell you this.
Oh, that's okay.
But yes, it's
we'll
a lot
out there for you.
And so don't jot it all down. You can find it later. And you can also look for it on the slideshow if you want to download the slideshow.
This PowerPoint will also be uploaded as well, yeah.
So you can find it there.
But I'll pull out all the links as well.
Great.
That'll be my afternoon.
I'm sorry. Okay, so these are the astronomy clubs, and that's the group that came and set up their telescopes for us. And yes, they have to be careful of their equipment, but they want everybody to look through the view piece and see. The moon was amazing. You see so much of the moon. And we did see Jupiter way, not very big. This is through this telescope that showed us the moon like huge, and it's just a little round thing on the horizon. But it was so exciting to really know that's what it was, and then it set. So we had to be there in time to see Jupiter. There's also a list of museums and planetariums that you might be able to contact, like the Mueller Planetarium here in Lincoln. And a number of, oh, I forgot to mention, this workshop was for librarians. It's aimed at public librarians, but we had other people there too. And it's for people from Kansas and Nebraska. So we have Kansas names here, Kansas organizations. And I learned a little bit about the Kansas Cosmosphere and Space Center in Hutchinson, Kansas. I think that would be a terrific place to visit too, as well as all the places here in Nebraska. Some more museums and planetariums, some NASA information, space grant and fellowship program, and also some observatories. So 2 in Nebraska, 1 in Kansas. That's pretty good. More resources for you, people to contact. And if they're too busy, good for them, because, you know, everybody was so eager to collaborate and work together. I know that if they possibly can, they'll be excited to work with you. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about Dr. Michael Jansen, who I said had done a wonderful job of explaining things to us so we could understand them. And he talked about the makeup of Jupiter. Jupiter is primarily hydrogen with some helium. They're the main gases that compose most all of Jupiter. Very high pressure inside Jupiter forms metallic hydrogen, which I had never heard of before. No. And he says that they believe a rocky core is at the very center of the planet. And he and his team have developed a process to investigate the gases, so the outer layer. Their microwave radiometer experiment will be on Juno to, we hope, discover what is there. And I specifically wrote down what he called that, because he was talking about sending microwaves out into the gaseous clouds and getting information back, they hope, about what's out there. And they're going to measure the thermal power and the magnetic field. And again, I don't think that their particular project is the one looking for water, because there'll be other things that are on Juno that are doing other kinds of research. So here is one of the many resources you have on that website I showed you. This shows you what Jupiter, what we think it looks like. So we've got the cloud tops, the gaseous hydrogen, then some liquid hydrogen, then that metallic hydrogen that makes up so much of the planet. And we believe there's a core in there of rock and etc. But we don't know that, and I don't think we'll find that out with Juno, since we're not really getting that deep. And there's just a little example of the size of Earth compared to Jupiter, which is kind of fun to show kids. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we think our Earth is pretty big, but there you go.
Nothing.
Some other activities we did. This one is called Investigating the Insights, and this is fun, and I think kids will really have a good time with this, although it's a little bit tricky to set up, only because you need to find some dark, extra-large balloons. Kellyanne said that the dark blue worked the best if you can find them. Black is okay. And what they did was they put something in there, not all of them, but most of them. So they might put a little bit of water. Don't put too much water in there because later on we'll be sorry. Or a magnet or some paper clips or beads, something like that in there. And then tie it really well. Oh, blow it up, the rest of it up with air. Sorry. So it's big and round, and then tie it up. And then what they did with us and what you could do with kids is have them in teams, maybe teams of 4, give them their balloon and say they have to discover what's inside there without breaking open the balloon. So we had things like compasses and magnets and paper clips, so we could try to find out is something in there magnetic, is something in there metal. So maybe there were metal BB type things in there that we could use our magnet on. And then we wrote down what we discovered. Then the best and most fun part of it was they gave us all a whole bunch of paper towels. And then they said, now pop your balloon and find out what's in there. And I'm pretty sure somebody had shaving cream in theirs or something. I remember something like that in one of them, but well, that wasn't in ours. So you have to be sure about what kind of mess you want. But the kids do have to open up those balloons to find out what it was that was in there.
If they guessed correctly,
right.
we're able to figure it out.
Yeah.
Nice.
So this mimics how, not exactly the same, but it's how you try to find out what's on the inside without being able to go there. And that's the idea behind this activity. So we'll just hop back to jumpstart to Jupiter and then see there's this. And right, if you go along, there's investigating the insides. And there's that activity. I'm not going to scroll all the way down and make you sick again. But again, it's all set up. Read through this and decide if this is something you want to do. If you have a place where they can pop, maybe you want them all to take their balloons outside and pop them in the parking lot. That wouldn't be a bad idea. Yeah. But again, a good activity that's fun to do, and it does, it's really kind of puzzling. We were rolling ours across the table, kind of shaking it in our hands, which you cannot do with a planet, I realize. But we got to do that, and it's puzzling what could be in there. Another activity, well, there's actually 3 activities. There's actually 4 activities under this chapter, but I only talk about 3. And the first one is solar system in my neighborhood, which is kind of a different way of doing the jump to Jupiter. And what they talk about there is that, that you use a map of the town if you have one, and it's pretty much what Sarah was doing, which is pick something in town that's going to be the sun, and then using the ratio, you don't have to figure it out. They have figured it out for you. Don't panic. I would have panicked. Figure out what else in the town or in our neighborhood are the other planets. And if you go, let's see, down here. Oh, there they are. I liked those pictures. So you're figuring out what are the other planets. And if we go here, I just want to show you where you go to find out the information you need. So we go down to Big Kid on the Block. Click there. Solar system in my neighborhood. Click on that. And then we're going to have to scroll down a little bit. So if you want to close your eyes, here we go. All right, so under materials, here's if you want to use, they have 2 different things going on. One is that you can do it with a giant pumpkin and other fruits, and do it in the room if it's raining or something. Then you get the ratio here under planet labels. So click on that. And here you are. This shows you scale. This is if you're using it for a food, then here's the scale distance. There's your sun. Here's how far Mercury should be. And then the kids are supposed to write in there what kind of fruit it might be, and then name a landmark that would work for that one. So you've got 2 different ways of doing it, all with these planet labels. Okay. Another activity as we go back past all of the planets again. My very elderly mother just shot up Norfolk. Okay, good. Dunking the planets, and the kids, of course, are going to love this. That fruit that maybe you bought for the first activity, or the one I just talked about, you can use for this too. And the idea is to get a tub of water and get these pieces of fruit or little poppy seeds or whatever you are using, representing the planets, is to help them explore density. And that's kind of a tricky thing to understand because, and these descriptions below are what they exactly how they explained it to us, and I wrote them down so I could keep it straight. So mass is how many atoms or matter or stuff you have, and how much you have doesn't change. Your weight, or how much your stuff is pulled by gravity and some other things, can change depending on where you are. If you're on the moon, you don't weigh as much. Woohoo! The density is the mass divided by the amount of space that the object takes up. So what we're talking about when we do dunking the planets is density. And they give you, again, a list of the fruits, some choices, things you can use. The important thing is you need to have a particular item to represent one of the planets. Because everything is going to sink but that one. And that is to show us that while that planet, it isn't Jupiter, it's Saturn. While that planet is pretty big, it is not very dense. And I think putting them in water, and we were all recording everything sank, and then we put the next, and it didn't sink. What? I thought everything was going to sink. So they might have fun with that. And then, of course, you might want to do that out in the parking lot, too, because you have a tub of water, you know. And this one is really tricky, but it is great fun. Well, I don't know. I haven't tried to do this, so, I mean, I weighed myself, but I didn't create the scale. It gives you all the information you need to know to do it. It's just a little bit. You have to get at least 3. They say at least 3, more if you want to. One scale represents Earth, one scale will represent Jupiter, and one scale needs to represent somewhere else. I would recommend the Moon or Saturn because you don't weigh as much on them. And what you have to do with a scale that has the dials, not the digital, is you take off the plastic and you white out the numbers and put in different numbers to represent the planet. So you have to label each one. Well, you don't have to change the Earth one, so yay. And again, it's all over here. I'm going to, watch out, I'm going to zoom up again and find this one. Big kid on the block. Because in here, they tell you the numbers you need. And I'm just going to scroll down to that. So hold your stomachs. You have to scroll down a little bit. Okay. I think it's this one. Family portrait and numbers. So yes. Okay, so the sun. No, this is other information, which is also good, but not the one I was looking for. Sorry. A little more. Okay, Solar Systems Scales Guide. That's pretty, once you see it, you're kind of pretty sure that's the one you want. Okay, so for 5 pounds on Earth, it's 1 pound on the Moon. It's 12 pounds on Jupiter. Oh, look, Saturn is 5. I was wrong to recommend Saturn. Mars is 2. Let's recommend Mars instead, or Mercury. Anyway, so you figure you have to, they say white them out and write the new numbers in. Okay, so that's a little complicated, but then you go have the kids, you know, each one labeled, and maybe some of the posters around each planet, and have the kids weigh themselves as if they were on each planet and write down their results. And that is great fun, and I just love weighing on the moon. Everybody should weigh on the moon. Okay, sorry. Get that out of there. So here are some ideas about making all of this that we've been talking about, and we've only kind of scratched the surface in many ways. Pretty obvious things, but take some time to look through all the activities on the web page. I love the fact that all the planning has already been done, and you can adapt it, you can adjust it, but be careful when you're adjusting like ratios or fruit, pieces of fruit or poppy seeds, to make sure that what you're doing still represents a particular planet so that kids get the real sense of what the differences are. And like Sandy recommended, she said talk to your teachers and tell them about this. But also, if you have a local science teacher who has some time this summer or next summer, or an astronomy fan, or an enthusiastic adult or young adult who wants to help, get some help there because they can do the scale for you. That is a job I would ask them to do. Well, maybe we do it together. Some other ideas are choose the activities you feel will work best with the age group you plan to involve and with the time you have and with the materials you have. Like Sandy said, this doesn't cost okay, getting some scales costs a little bit of money. But the other things, you're buying some fruit, you have a tub, things that you probably have around, and it's not really very expensive at all, and you have people who want to come and work with you at your library.
Well, and when I'm saying inexpensive, I was thinking too of the fact that when you do have a presenter come into the libraries, anymore, if you can get someone, smaller libraries maybe not, I think if you get anyone who's under $50, I mean, even $50 is cheap for a lot of the performers. It's $100 or more. So comparatively, this is a very inexpensive program to be able to do.
And maybe you can find a community member who's willing to donate the $50 for that cost, which of course, I'm sure you've asked them before, but often they want to help you again.
If they find someone who it's their thing, like who's into astronomy and you've never talked to them before, but they maybe say, oh my gosh, yes, I'll give money for that because that's my pet thing that I love to do.
Or you might even work, I was thinking too, like with some of the Eagle Scouts where they need to do a project. If you have an Eagle Scout who's very much into astronomy, this might be just a project that would be tailor-made for them because they would be helping the community and they would be also invested in what interests them.
Very good ideas. And I always like to say have fun. Because you know some kid is going to ask you a question you don't know the answer to, but that's all you have to do is say, hey, we don't know everything about Jupiter. That's why we're sending Juno out there to check on it. So maybe you can find an answer sooner or later, but you know, maybe the child will find the answer.
I believe Sarah had mentioned in an email that she was using this and linking it to the theme for the summer reading program this year.
Oh, yes.
Yes,
that
the team theme is You Are Here. And so, yes, that's tying in. Because, well, even if you're doing it for the younger kids, the theme is One World, Many Stories.
Yes.
And we have our one world here, but there's other worlds out there to explore as well.
And even though the Juno launches this year, if you don't feel you have the time to do this year, next year's summer reading program theme is about nighttime. So how can that not work?
Yes.
The teen theme is Own the Night, and the children's theme is Dream Big. So,
and you know, I think you could even do this for some of your adults if you wanted to.
Yeah, because we had a great time looking through the telescopes.
Well, the theme this year is Novel Destinations.
Good point. Good
destination. And for folks of our age, I mean, we have the people who grew up with Star Trek and Star Wars and all the space things, and I think so it could even be adapted to go into the adult program.
And that might be the direction you'll want to go this year because you have your other programs planned, but maybe not so much for the adults. So, yeah, make it work. And remember, in 5 years, you can have another Juno party because we hope it will have arrived at Jupiter by then. So, you know, have your party now and get ready for one in about 5 years. Well, they say it'll take 5 years because, interestingly enough, they are, when they shoot it into space, it's not just going straight out that way to Jupiter. It's spiraling, just like the rest of us, or orbiting and slowly going further out there. They say that so it will slow down. They have to do that so by the time it reaches Jupiter, when Jupiter is where it is, so it can go into orbit around Jupiter. And if it's going too fast, it'll just skip on by. So that's why it takes so long, in case you wondered. Now, are there any questions?
If anybody has any questions, feel free. You can type them into the questions section, or I can unmute you, and you can use your microphone if you want to. We do have one comment from Laura Hess at Stanton Public Library, just saying, awesome ideas, good for all ages.
Excellent.
Thanks. Yeah.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
So see, you were right about adults and teens and kids. There's things for
everybody's
everybody.
going to be interested in this stuff. Absolutely.
I did also, we're still interested in questions, but I'm just going to move on to contact information, everybody's email, and Sarah, I'm sure, will be happy to answer questions about the programs that she's planning. And Sandy's also full of ideas and information, and I'll be happy to answer
I
questions.
did not attend the workshop, though. If you have questions about that, you have to direct the questions to Sally or Sarah.
Good clarification there.
It doesn't look like we've got any questions coming in. No.
Well, thank you.
That was a great
So glad you were here or viewing this after the fact. We're glad you, and we hope you have lots of good ideas since we presented what we knew about this.
Right. If you do have any questions, you can, after the session, of course, you think of anything, use those emails on the previous slide to contact Sally, Sarah, or Sandy. Well, all S's on it. Sorry. And they'll be happy to help you out with it. But yeah, it doesn't look like right now I get any urgent things coming in. So thank you guys very much for presenting. I was looking forward to this session because everybody's into astronomy and what's going on up in the sky, so that was very interesting, seeing all the cool things ideas that they gave you at the session. I just thought it was great that NASA is doing this, with big old NASA putting together these things for libraries and schools and everything.
And they want everybody to use the information, so go to the website, download whatever you want. It's all there, free to use.
It's all free, ready, set up, ready for you to go. Yeah,
it's great.
All the hard work is done. So thank you very much for attending this week. And I hope you join us next week when it will be our monthly Tech Talk with Michael Sowers, the Technology Innovation Librarian here at the Library Commission. And next week, along with his usual sites and things that he talks about, his topic is Living in the Cloud, How Using Online Services Can Let You Soar. And we have a group of librarians in the Northeast Kansas Library System. Actually, we're going to talk about cloud computing. And this is actually a request we had about a month ago. Someone sent me an email saying, I don't have a clue about cloud computing. Can you guys do something about that? So this is actually as a result of a request from one of our librarians in Nebraska. We're doing now a topic on something they asked for on cloud computing. So if you're interested in that, you want to know more about it, sign up for next week's. And if you have any ideas, anything you want to know more about, send me messages and we can see if we can find someone to talk about it. Or maybe you want to talk about something. That works too.
Yes.
Come in and be a speaker on NCompass Live. So nothing else come in. So thank you very much for attending, and we will see you next week then. So, bye-bye. Bye.